License costs are skyrocketing. Enterprises and governments are in turmoil. The future is uncertain. Where can we turn for solutions to the VMware crisis? Let's meet the Microsoft solutions we need right now. I'm Michael Richardson, CTO of Dynamic Consultants Group, and your host for this exciting podcast series. For this episode, I'm excited to introduce an esteemed guest, Microsoft MVP Carl Wester-Ebbinghaus. Carl, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for having me, Michael. Sure, I'm Carl Wester-Ebbinghaus, working for NetGo Group as a senior IT consultant. I'm specialized into Windows Server and Azure Stack HCI. My main goal is to help customers to achieve great solutions based on Microsoft technology, which today surrounds about the buzzword adaptive cloud. And this means Azure Arc and leveraging Azure Arc services and helping customers to get the best out of hybrid IT.
Great. Well, hey, we're really excited to have you on here. I'm happy you were willing to join us. I think we've got a really interesting series lined up, all kind of focused on this this VMware situation that's going on with Broadcom has acquired VMware and they've made some changes that I'm excited to dive into. And we're going to talk about Microsoft solutions over the course of this series as well, and where do we go with our clients and what are we advising them on if they're on VMware today. So Carl, what can you tell us about what's happening with VMware right now? What are you seeing in some of the clients you've worked with, and why is this important for organizations to be paying attention to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I'm mostly working with small, medium business customers, SMB, which means they're ranging from 50 to 250 users, and many of them have solutions built on VMware, and they were running good for a couple of years now. And with the acquisition of Broadcom, VMware acquisition of Broadcom, they're facing new challenges. And one of them is, for example, we have different licensing around, which also means different prices, but also some uncertainty about the portfolio of VMware that we had before, like VDI solutions, Horizon. Want to name that they basically aparted from the VMware solutions, and now things doesn't feel like it's all of one company, and they are concerned about the future, right? How they can basically protect their investment or have to move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm hearing some of those same things with uncertainty of the future of the products with VMware and vSphere, but also some of the more peripheral products like Horizon. That's really important to just consider where are these products headed under the ownership of Broadcom. You mentioned license changes. What are you seeing? Like, what are you hearing from clients as far as how that's really shaking out with what they're being offered?
Yeah, this is a huge range I'm hearing from customers. So you have to understand, I'm not a sales consultant, so I'm not in the basically front row. But what I'm hearing is from my bank end, from consultancy services, it's like customers come to me and asking basically in meetings like, hey, Carl, we're facing this and this, like, I don't know, price increases up to 30%. We are now running vSAN or VxRail or you name it, solutions from VMware. So what would you propose to do? And this is where I say, yeah, it's much depending on what you are actually doing now with VMware. So how much are you invested into it? How deep are you interconnected with these solutions? This means how much did you invest into workforce, into automation, into licensing? What is the hardware landscape you're on? What are the workloads you're running? And all the things. So it's much a difference if you just have a visa on, maybe 4 nodes, and that's it. Or if you have a huge landscape based on VMware with several clusters, with a SAN solution or several SAN solutions, and that's completely different story to tell and to figure out, right? So there is not just one advice you can give, but as always in IT, it depends. So
yes, absolutely.
This is the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this is going to impact different organizations differently, as you said. And
Yes.
one of the things that I'm hearing and that's really been bubbling up is the price increase, of course. I think the product roadmap is important, but the price increase is where things have really come to bear very quickly. And I'm hearing 8x, 10x, sometimes even 30x increases. And this is hitting small businesses as well as enterprises and governments.
Absolutely.
Too. I have a connection, and I can't share the name of the company, but I have a connection where someone's getting a quote from before they were going from like 8 to 12 million in their VMware costs, and the new quote is over 200 million, and it's just mind-boggling. Some of the and that's really driving organizations that I'm seeing to look closely at this. Is VMware the right solution? And I mean, it sounds like you're seeing the same thing from whether it's SMB, kind of that medium business to enterprise space. It's really across the board. And it's a big thing. And you mentioned too,
absolutely,
it depends what's your investment in VMware look like, right? Because that may depend on where you head from here. But a little statistic I'll share: 75% of enterprise organizations use VMware, and so that many people are right now going, what do we do about licensing? What do we do about our hypervisor and our IT stacks? What do we do? So, you're seeing it, I'm seeing it. It's a big deal in the industry. So,
yeah.
What are the paths you see in front of an organization that's considering, what do we do about our VMware license increases and the product roadmap? What do you see as the options?
Yeah, well, it depends a lot of the depth of the investments, and it depends on the contractual size. So when things do expire, so when the hardware cycle is on, so when is the next hardware cycle coming in? When is the next licensing cycle coming in for VMware? What is the strategy about the enterprise or the SMB customer about things like VDI? So will they still do remote desktop host? Are they looking into something like AVD? Or were they invested into VDI solutions from VMware? And this all plays a big role. And I really tend to talk about, if they really want to talk about it now. So some do. Then we try to paint a big picture and say, okay, what is your licensing on the Microsoft 365 side? Why? Because if you have Microsoft 365 licenses, some include AVD licensing already. Some include Defender licensing already for client endpoint protection. And if you do client endpoint protection with Defender, it's like, okay, why not doing the same for Windows Server and trust this solution already, instead of having silos of different solutions for different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is so much things you can basically reiterate on. And VMware is not the only one increasing the prices a lot. So there are also other competitors. And this is the point. So if the customer, for example, says, okay, I require a SAN solution and I cannot get off that for this and this and this reason, good news. There is also a solution from Microsoft with Azure Stack HCI from Dell that offers SAN solution and HCI. Sounds weird, but it's existing now, just announced today. So there is things like you can consider, but all of this, no matter what we're speaking about in detail, I try to refrain from that now, is you need planning. You need planning and you need to discuss what are the workloads, how can we reduce workloads, how can we modernize workloads, speaking about old platforms, about technical depths. And there is a huge amount of um, chance to consolidate. And why would you do that in facing this challenge with the licensing side only?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you want to change from VMware to something else, there are different paths I see, and Microsoft painted them in the Windows Server Summit 2024. There was a great video from Jeff Woolsey that basically worked on that topic. What are your options with Microsoft?
Mm-hmm.
And some options just from the top of my mind were like, okay, you can migrate from VMware on-premise to VMware in Azure. So you have VMware still involved. I'm not sure about the pricing. And you can move from on-premises to Azure using VMware. And there is not so much of change. You can also go to Azure and migrate to Azure directly and leaving VMware out of the quotation. You could go to say you have a lot of SAN investment and you have to, for now, you have to use this SAN investment, and you can go Windows Server 2022 or later this year 2025 with huge advancements in this area. And if you can afford to say, okay, I'm at the end of my hardware life cycle and I really want to consolidate and cut costs and modernize everything, you can go Azure Stack HCI. These are some options Microsoft offers at the moment. And we could talk hours about that in detail. I don't have the time, unfortunately.
Absolutely, absolutely, same. And yeah, I saw that video. That was a really great video that Jeff put out about those solutions. And you know, I don't think it was necessarily aimed at VMware, but it was like some really great. Okay, here's the solutions that just make sense. Something interesting I'll share about the VMware Azure VMware solution that's kind of timely is Microsoft's actually doing some promotional pricing on that solution, um, where you can get your Azure VMware solution pricing locked in for 5 years, and that expires in about 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay,
So, which is
that's
really
quite a hurry.
interesting to me. Yeah, but that's really interesting to me because if you're on VMware today and you're about to have to go through a huge license increase, you can
Mm,
actually stay on VMware and stave that off by migrating to VMware still. You know, so it's a very familiar platform.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
a lot less variables to control in that migration. Um, and you're locked in at that pricing for 5 years, which is really kind of incredible. But
mm,
all that to say, I mean, Microsoft's got some great solutions, and I'm glad you called all of those out. I want to go back to something else that you said too. You know, you said it depends. You know, if okay, you're on VMware, where do you go next? It depends, and I think that is such an important point to consider, that you really have to look at some of the specifics of your environment, of what type of hardware, what age of hardware, what license vehicle do you already have? You know, are you on an enterprise agreement, or do you have OEM licensing, or are you using CSP even on your
yes.
on-premise hardware? You know, there's so many components of that, and you know, I know, you know, you're acting as kind of a solutions consultant, and you know, I'm kind of in that same industry. of sometimes you just really need to ask for some guidance on some of this stuff because there's so much depth, and others, other enterprise or organizations may have that expertise and they can dive into that on their own. But there's a lot to process here, and this isn't something you just make a decision on tomorrow and then just execute it in a few weeks. It's a big problem. It's something that takes a lot of planning and focus to tackle and make the best decision for your organization. So that's really interesting. So I guess what I heard you say is, if you're an organization today on VMware, you're facing some of these challenges with licensing costs and with concern about the product roadmaps. You talked about, well, you can look at public cloud or staying on-prem. You talked about the Microsoft solutions, Azure VMware solution. You've got Azure public cloud, and you talked a little bit about Hyper-V as well as Azure Stack HCI. I guess what would be your main deciding points between Hyper-V or Azure Stack HCI, both on-prem, right? What would you advise clients to consider, one or the other?
Yeah, I think that's quite easy for me. It depends a lot on the quality of support, to be honest. So I personally don't consider that for non-enterprise agreement customers, so the quality of support is the same for Windows Server and for Azure Stack HCI. When you acquire Azure Stack HCI, it's still based on Hyper-V, like Azure, like Windows Server. But the point is you can acquire support easily through your subscription or through CSP subscription. And this makes things a lot more accessible in terms of support and quality. And Azure Stack HCI is not just another hypervisor, in my opinion. We can talk about hours on that, but it's basically expanding so much more. And it's a hardware solution basically, and there's a lot around that. And this hardware solution is basically fueled by support by the OEM, which is providing the hardware solution, and also Microsoft as a software partner. And there are some special offerings like from Dell, Apex Cloud Nodes, which are even more unified, which could be even more familiar to people like that are using to VxRail. And Dell has an offering that it's basically very, very similar to VxRail, just based on Azure Stack HCI. Now, as I said, also expanding for some certain use cases where you can expand this with external storage, so we can independently scale up storage requirements. We are really speaking about scale storage, not like some terabytes here, but and without expanding on the compute and RAM requirements, right? So if you have uneven requirements, even there is a solution for that. And you don't really need a classical SAN 3-tier data center. You can still have amazing cost savings. And I personally want to point out two things. We should look into licensing very, very closely. Especially with Microsoft, there are some things they have to consider, and with Azure Stack as well, HCI as well. And if you really get into this, if you make yourself familiar with that, you will notice there are a lot of benefits having Windows Server Data Center with software assurance to reduce the cost. So when you hear about Microsoft, they always tell you, okay, Azure Stack HCI is about $10 per active core per month. And most customers are abstain like, oh, that's quite much for what exactly? But if you have data center software assurance, like enterprise agreement, volume licensing with software assurance, or CSP subscription, which includes software assurance rights, then you pay exactly zero. And that's not exactly the story that you hear from Microsoft often, to be honest. Just lately, there was a show from Microsoft and Intel towards partners, which was public, so everyone can visit that one. Very good thing. It was about 3 hours of really deep stuff. But they just emphasized on the, okay, you can have it for free when you question that one. So it's always like they're citing the official. We have this cost footprint. Instead of telling you, okay, basically you don't have to pay for that, because who on this planet has not software assurance? And we just talked about it. Some customers are running VMware and having OEM licensing. Okay, they are out. They cannot take the benefits. But if you think about all the benefits that you can have with software assurance, so Azure Hybrid Benefits, they're called. We have Azure Update Manager for free, usually costs $5 per month per VM. We have the $10 per active core per month for Azure Stack HCI. We have cost reduction on Azure Stack HCI for Azure Virtual Desktop running on there. So we could name a plethora of things with Azure Hybrid Benefits. All the cores that you license on premises are licensed in the cloud as well. So you can use them side by side at the same time. And so on and so on. We can talk for an hour about that. And most people don't think about that. So they just think like, okay, we are paying software assurance just to have the latest version of Windows. But today, this is no longer true.
Yeah, you get so many benefits with the hybrid benefits, like you said, and so if you take a really thought out approach to licensing, you may be getting so many cloud features for free with licensing that you already would have had to pay for, right? You already need to license Windows Server, and data centers, the best way to do that with at scale, where you've got many VMs running on your hosts. How does that compare to the story if you talk about VMware and the licensing story there?
Well, I'm not an expert about VMware licensing. I've seen some sheets that have been updated by colleagues about their licensing costs. And as a Microsoft guy, I'm always questioning this. Okay, what you are paying? For what you are paying this extra cost? You have to pay VMware for a solution for specific features and for support. And my question is this something that you actually use? And if you don't use it, why paying for that one? And why paying for that even more? And that's a basic question. And it's not like I wouldn't really advise any customers to say, okay, just stop that one and just switch. I really would say, okay, get a good consultant service and talk about this at length. This takes some hours, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
do a proof of concept, something. Yeah.
Yeah, and do something like proof of concept, or build something like proof of concept and see, okay, what are the benefits? What are also the disadvantages? Where are the limits? I'm not saying that we can cover everything one-to-one from what VMware has in Microsoft Sphere, but there are solutions, and we have to adopt them and have to learn about this. Yeah. And proof of concept is one way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so just to put a fine point on what you said about licensing and comparing to VMware. So you said, what are you paying for the VMware licensing for? And I think we talked about this before. Is if you look at what you're using, you may find that with Microsoft solutions, you're already paying to license the features that cover everything you needed in VMware. And so it's the term that some people use, and I know you've said this before too, is the VMware tax. Like, if you can already host your workloads with Hyper-V or Azure Stack HCI, you already are paying for support on your Windows workloads because you need support on Windows. And then you're going to turn around and pay for those same things on VMware. You're really double spending on licensing. And I think an approach where you look at a Microsoft solution from top to bottom, you may end up saving considerable, especially with the changes coming with VMware licensing. So I think that's a great point. I'm glad that you brought out the licensing cost topic, because that's so important for organizations to consider. So we're coming to the end of the time that we have. I know we need to wrap this up. We could talk for hours more about, where do we go?
Certainly.
But is there anything final you would leave with enterprises or SMB customers that are wrestling with this scenario, and what do we do?
Yes, absolutely. So I would advise enterprises and SMB customers do the math with licensing and do the math with hardware, and really consider the way how to get your workloads into this new sphere, and really consider consolidation. If you go lift and shift into Azure or Azure VMware or Azure Stack HCI, this could be a fast way, a fast approach, but don't be tempted to do lift and shift and say, okay, we do the rest and doing it good later on. You are often struggling to do this later on because of constraint of budget and workforce and side hustles and other projects, and you maybe don't do this and will never complete the story, and basically may face even higher costs, and this could even ridiculously outperform the cost increase of VMware. And last note, if you don't do lift and shift, and if you do planning, and if you do consolidation, you would do this for Azure migrations, and you would do the same for Azure Stack HCI. And all these, every hour that you put into consolidation before migrating anywhere is time well spent. You're saving on the hardware costs, and I'm telling about Azure Stack HCI is a consolidation rate which is easily approaching 8 servers to 1 server. So it's huge. We can talk about reduced hardware costs, reduced licensing, reduced physical costs. We can talk about sustainability goals that enterprises have to fulfill today, saving energy costs, and so on and so on. And it's a huge topic, and I don't want to blow that up, but I can just advise you, please do the math and do the big picture and take the time for that.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. That's a great point. Well, just to wrap up, Carl, thank you so much for coming on. I think this has been really insightful. Hopefully our viewers and listeners gain some insight. I'm sure they will. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. Come back for the next episode. We're going to dive deeper into specifics of many of the things we already touched on here with Carl. We're going to dive into specifics of some of those topics much more deeply. You can also find more content at richardsoncloud.com, and I'll look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for having me. And thank you to the audience for listening to this podcast. I'm really thrilled about the next episodes and looking forward to hear them.
Yep, thank you so much.